Hi, I'm Kate Walling from Traction Hero. You are listening to the Social Media Talks podcast with Alan Hennessy from compassmedia.ie.
Before we begin this episode, we'd like to give a big shout out to our sponsors and also our supporters. The Social Media Talks podcast is sponsored by ContentCal. For more information, visit their website at contentcal.io. We would also like to remind you the Social Media Talks podcast is proudly supported by charityradio.ie. And now, this week's episode.
Welcome to Social Media Talks podcasts, brought to you by compassmedia.ie.
Hello and thank you for joining me. This is the Social Media Talks podcast brought to you by compassmedia.ie. Episode number 86. I'm your host Alan Hennessy and this is the podcast to help business owners who want to learn more about social media marketing. And if you'd like to listen to any of our previous podcasts, you can do so by logging onto our website at compassmedia.ie/podcasts. You can also join our Facebook group by logging onto facebook.com/groups/social media talks. And we're looking forward to today's show. Today I'm going to be joined by Kate Walling. And Kate is an award-winning marketing expert and is an exclusive marketing and consultant and entrepreneur based in Silicon Valley with more than 15 years of experience building dynamic marketing teams and crafting brand stories that attract new customers and accelerate growth. She excels in helping technology companies and startups to exceed their dynamic growth goals and is known throughout the industry for her creative brand marketing strategies. And today we're going to be talking to Kate all about the pressures of marketing. So without further ado, I think we will transition straight over to the interview with Kate. Hi Kate, how are you? Thanks for joining us today on the Social Media Talks podcast. It's a pleasure to have your company. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Alan.
It's a pleasure to have your company. And of course, today we're going to be talking all about the pressures of marketing. Yes, indeed. Music to my ears, because I know it is one of those subjects that we all, I suppose, marketing in a whole, we all do it. And we all are in the middle of it. But at the end of the day, there is a huge amount of pressure on us as marketers. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. I think we're going to learn and explore a lot of options here as well throughout the podcast. But I suppose before we start, if you could give us a little bit of a brief background on yourself before we get stuck into our chosen topic.
Absolutely. I've been an entrepreneur most of my career and in different ways. So I had a B2C startup at the age of 23. I later built a digital marketing agency in Seattle. I then came down to Silicon Valley to help run marketing for a mobile advertising platform. And now I'm back in the entrepreneurial game, both advising Silicon Valley CEOs on their marketing strategy and building a marketing platform.
Wow. So very, very busy lady. A lot going on. There's a lot going on there, believe me.
There is. I really love startups and the actual challenges of startups. And I also love marketing. So the combination is where you'll find me.
It's a fine marriage, as they say. Yes, brilliant stuff.
Yes.
And of course, today we're going to be talking all about the pressures of marketing. And I know you know a huge amount about this. So I think, I would totally agree. Like we spoke about it before we came on air and we were talking about the different pressures that people are under when it comes to marketing. So like what has been your, I suppose your views on, what is your view on this?
I see it just everywhere I turn and in my own experience is that marketing teams are getting more and more pressure. CMOs are under profit and loss pressure these days. And as marketing gets more challenging, there are two things happening. Number one, there are more and more solutions that marketers can use. So the MarTech stack is getting huge and just is ever growing to the point that it's difficult to make decisions about what products to use and how to use them and how to integrate. And the second thing that's happening is that marketing teams are not necessarily getting larger. We still have kind of the same resources, but are expected to do more with the same amount, right? So even in Silicon Valley, where you see really large marketing budgets, and sometimes there's a small increase in headcount, but it's hard to spend all the money even given the resources you have.
Yeah.
So you have to be very, very smart about what you're prioritizing, and then also how you're building out the solutions for efficiency.
And I think it is because, as you say, like, with regards to the pressures are more. And as you say yourself, like, the marketing teams aren't getting any bigger. They'll just be putting under more and more pressure to get the more work done. And then, I suppose in a sense, we have so many different opportunities now to market our products or our services or whatever it may be, with so many different, I suppose, even programs and social media, digital marketing, offline, online. There's so much there. So it's like it's one again. I suppose it's how do you choose? What do you do? Where do you start? How am I going to develop this campaign that I'm going to do? So I think it's very, very tough at the moment for people.
It is, and it's also a time where there's so many marketing solutions being built that you feel like you can never know all of them. So for an example would be with email marketing and marketing automation, you've got the traditional large platforms that large companies use, but then you've got all these interesting startups coming up with really snappy solutions that are right and fresh and easier. But then you have to worry about all the integrations with that. And on top of that, then you'll turn around and all of a sudden there's a really cool startup that's building like AI tools as an email. And you're like, but this other solution doesn't have that. And so it's just this piecing together, and you never feel like you know everything you need to know, or you feel there's a great sense of FOMO. Yeah, I think
yeah, there is. I was just about to say that there is that fear of missing out, and is one better than the other, or what do I, where do I go? Do I stick with this? Do I sort of and then what I always find, and especially when I talk to even startups and, small and medium-sized businesses, is that they'll say, oh, well, I started using this, but I found this other program and I don't know which one to go for. And I'm going, hold on, you have to stop. You have to stand back from it and say, okay, well, what works best for you? If there is a better product or a better solution to doing it, yes, of course, you have to investigate it. But you also have to remember that every day I think we are marketing our products or whatever it may be and looking for that solution. I think it can be very pressurized.
I agree, and I think your advice is the strongest. Is you've got to work with what you've got and what's best for you. I got even a phone call. This is where it gets tricky. Is especially in Silicon Valley, your marketing teams. People don't stay in jobs longer than 18 to 20 months. And whenever you bring in new marketing leadership, it can change your whole team. Right? It's one of the most transient teams in a way, because if you change your marketing leadership, they tend to bring in their own talent. And so what happens there is where you've got all this data coming in and you've got growing sales teams that you need tools with sales support, is you can get locked into software that you don't know how to use. So like I got a call yesterday of like this company's using Pardot, which is part of the Salesforce stack, and they've now got a team that doesn't know how to use it.
Yeah.
And so you run into some issues like that. I mean, the great thing for startups is that as long as you're not signing long-term agreements that lock you in, like let's say this company had signed like a 2 or 3 year agreement, right? So that's a little harder. But when you're using scrappier tools, you can move faster. You can, make the best choice that you can at the moment for the tool that works for you and your team, and confidently move forward, as you're saying. And if there ends up being something that's helpful, maybe figure out a way to use it that's not completely disruptive to your current stack.
Yeah, and I think it's very important, as you say, like when someone does take over and they bring in this new marketing team, and as you say, there's new talent, and nobody's knocking that. But what I'm saying is like there's maybe other departments within this that are going, well, hold on, this is all new to us. Where do we start? And I think it adds pressure onto every different department within an organization when that happens. Absolutely. As well.
Absolutely. I think one of the best ways to combat all this pressure is if you are at a point with your startup or in your business where you can. So let me back up a little bit. Businesses are under pressure in general to have a great marketing strategy, right? And how are we going to stand out? And that becomes so much a large part of the business model that I think that if you're able to stand back and look at marketing holistically and say, how does this affect the product and where we're going? And then you prioritize based on that. I think then you've got a really synergized strategy that you can feel really grounded in. And I see that working extremely well.
Yeah, and I think as well as that, like one of the big points, and I know even when we're talking to clients or we're consulting with them or training with them, and they'll all say like, I have to get all this done, and well, like what marketing, how should I market this, and I'm going, hold on, you're missing the point here. You need to stand back from it. You need to understand, okay, what are the objectives? What is it that I want to achieve? What are the goals? And build from that, as opposed to going, okay, it's full on marketing. We need to be on every social platform. We need to be doing email marketing. There may not even be a need for that. Like I was actually only with a customer there this afternoon, and we were talking about that, and he was saying, like, what is the best platform for me to use with regards to this? And he came up with some crazy idea, and I'm going, why would you even bother to go near that platform? Because your audience isn't there, first off, and why are you marketing on that? Why are you wasting that advertising budget, or why are you using that marketing budget to basically get nothing from it? Like, go where your audience is, obviously. So I think that also a lot of people, there's a lot of that goes on within marketing departments where they actually are working not in unison but all in different directions, and it doesn't gel until someone actually stands back from and goes, hold on, what is our key objectives here, I think?
It's an excellent point, and I see that all the time as well. Is like, oh, we've got to be everywhere. And it's like, well, you can't be everywhere well.
Exactly.
Right? And in order to figure out where you should be, it's like, what is that overall strategy? And it's not only, it's first like, what is that holistic, what is marketing's function and how does it influence the product, right? And then there's so in order to do that, what are the main objectives? So like I was talking to a startup, it was last week, and their main marketing challenging right now is it's a SaaS company. So it's basically churn, and it's setting up initial lead generation. Or actually they have tons of leads. It's how do you nurture those leads? So is there some basic marketing automation? And so we're able to say, okay, there are all these other things that you can do right now. But why don't we just fix these two things? Because these are the bottom line goals that are going to affect revenue, right? And by like hyper focusing on like, let's take 2 months and like, let's really fix these two problems. And when you're in an environment where you're dealing with venture capital and funding in the aggressive ways that we do here, it's even more important to do that. I mean, I think it's important anyways, right? Because even if you're a small business owner, it's your own money or it's your own, like, how are we going to affect revenue? First start with how does marketing affect what we're doing here at all? And then what's the number one thing that's going to affect revenue or our overarching business goal here? And then like what you're saying is mapped to that, because you can't do everything well, nor should you. Yeah,
exactly. And it's like, as I've often say it, and I always talk about it, we become digital monsters when we go online, because that's what we do. Whereas, when people say, oh, well, I have to be on every platform, or I have to be doing everything. And you go, well, in real life, can you be in 3 different places at the one time? And they go, no, that's physically impossible. And I say, so exactly the same online. Be where your audience is, or be where your customers are, and that's really, when you narrow it down and when you actually break it all down, you start to see that and you start to understand that, then that marketing becomes so much easier for you to do. But you're only piling, I think, the pressure on you if you're piling the pressure on yourself and your team if you're trying to cover all bases at the same time.
I totally agree. And I think, another thing that's adding to the chaos is, and when we specifically talk about social media, are the changes that platforms make. And so you might have a strategy that's working unbelievably well for you, and then the platform makes a change and it makes it harder. And so what you see is people like doubling or tripling down, like, I'm going to overcome and I'm going to beat this. But instead you might want to take a step back and say, okay, so if this platform is going to be changing, what does that mean? And do I really, is this something worth pursuing or not? Yeah. Oh,
right. I totally agree with you. Like I've seen it in action. I've seen it with one particular customer that was on one of the networks, was on one of the social platforms, and they plumbed their business, everything, all the marketing, all into that in one place. And this particular network, Facebook, let's just say it as it is, came along and they just changed it one day, literally with a drop of a hat. And they literally were lost. They didn't know where to turn. And I was saying to them for months, I says, you need to expand that out and not just rely on one platform. Because at the end of the day, we all know that, especially with the social networks, that it's rented space. It's not yours. You don't own it. So your website is where I would be sort of sending people to, because that's yours and nobody can take that away from you, well, within reason. So, I think that where you see that is quite a lot at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've got these models, like direct to consumer models, that a lot of venture capital money, and they were reliant on Facebook advertising. And that cost of that user acquisition ended up being too high. And so a lot of these companies are struggling right now. And so I think it's always important. Well, what I tell especially very early stage startups is make a list of 10 to 15 different marketing strategies you can try, and then go through and test them and see what happens. And, make sure that they're affordable, yet also that they're significant enough to get results from that you can measure. Right. So if you're going to just do like a $10 Facebook ad campaign, that's not going to be statistically significant enough to. No, it's not going to give you. It's not going to give you any type of measurement of what you're doing. Yeah. Right. So what you want to do is try different techniques and then see what happens, because, like you're saying, if you're reliant on one or two things, especially on a platform that you don't own, that adds for even more chaos, as there's chaos in the marketing space as there is. I think it goes back to common sense when we got to think about this realistically. How are we best going to suit? How are we going to best advertise? How are we going to best market this product? Like, how are we going to get this to the audience that we want them to see? And that can be marketing. And like, I know a lot of people will sort of say when you talk about marketing, oh yeah, it's all about, we're talking here about online, but there has to be that opportunity as well of traditional marketing, because I think it's now starting to really it's balanced out. Like for so long it was traditional marketing and we do a little bit of digital marketing, and whereas now it's become 20th century, we are literally living in a parallel of what's going on, and there's a huge amount of online and offline marketing that should be done for any one product or service or whatever it may be we're talking about. Well, I think you nailed it when we were talking earlier about how it really comes down to people and customers and wherever they are, right? So it's building strategies that take the online with the offline. It's thinking about unique experience. Of course, now, especially Silicon Valley startups, we have this pressure of how do you deliver a unique experience at scale, right? But before you can do that, you have to deliver it not at scale. You have to really understand and connect these people to the actual product and make a delightful experience. So I think it really goes back to what you said in terms of connecting to each customer and understanding that connection. Yeah, and I think that's the key here. Like, I know we interviewed Mark Schaefer on the podcast a while back, and we spoke about his new book, the Marketing Rebellion book. And as he says, it's the most human company wins. And that's going back to people buy from people, and they are in control, not us are in control. So we have to know where our markets are and have to know what we're doing with our marketing to reach them people that is going to solve a problem, or is going to help them, or is going to entice them to come and do business with us. And I think that's the key here to it. And it's so insightful when you think about it that way. It's really quite simple. And that's the part that makes marketing fun, right? Like, I think that's why we're marketers. Yeah. At the end of the day is we all like connecting to people, and we like the challenge of building a product and making it relate to the people who are buying it. Yeah. And I think that's where the real joy comes in as a marketer. Instead of, these technology integrations and how these platforms work together, that part's not as fun. Yeah, because I only had a conversation before I came on the podcast. I was only talking to someone, and we were talking about a particular. They wanted to increase their profiles and stuff like and all that type of good stuff. And I was saying, but like at the end of the day, you have to talk to people. Whether that be online, people want to talk to. And I was giving her the example of, if I walk into a coffee shop and I say hello to you, you'll say hello back to me. So why are you not doing this online? And I think it's about educating people. Then they go, she says, yeah, I never thought of it that way. And I'm going, well, and she says, oh, we're always guilty of doing that. And I'm going, well, you need to change that, because that's what it's about, So and I think we, as you say, people buy from people, and they want to interact. And that's the whole part of a business is to build on relationships, build on whatever trust and that likable factor and stuff like that. So it's all encompassing. I think it's that market fit that is so important. I it's also feel intimidating. And I think it's like what you're saying. It's kind of like the last thing sometimes a marketer wants to think about is like going and talking to customers or, but I think the reality is the second you do, you connect so much more with the work, and the fear goes away pretty instantly because people, it's just a conversation. And so I think that's a really powerful part of marketing, that when marketers take the time to do that, you start to enjoy the job more too, right? Like you feel so much more connected.
Yeah. And I think, I would agree totally. Yeah, you do feel more connected, and it's ears on the ground, and it's people. Like we look at this, the sales rep who for years went out and he cold called people. Now he has an opportunity to go online and to find these people and to talk to these people. But at the end of the day, he still has to go and meet these clients or whatever it is. But he's not doing it in respect of like, oh, what are they going to say? They know who they are. It's like me with the podcast here. I know you before I even talked to you today on the podcast. We've never talked before. But what I did is I went and I done my research. I found you. I looked at what you were doing, how you were marketing yourself. And then I'm able to gain a lot of information. And then when I speak to you in person, we have a much better conversation because we both know where we're coming from. We both know who we are. I think that's the key to it. And that is great marketing at the end of the day, I think.
It's experience, right? It's building an experience where people come together and both sides are catered to and met and kind of grow together. And I think that's the beauty of marketing when you come down to the holistic part. Of course, there are brand marketers like myself. So I love all parts of marketing, but branding is just the creative aspects of it are so fun for me. And whenever you have a preference like that, you can veer toward it. And it's so fun to polish something up and give it a look and feel. But I think, in terms of building that connection first, it amplifies all the other work that you do. Yeah, and for sure.
The question there is just something that springs to mind is, and I know there'll be a lot of businesses out here who would have marketing strategies, and they'd be looking at developing them, and I suppose developing a brand. So what would be your suggestions for branding? And I know you this is a huge part of what you do. So with regards to branding, what should people be, I suppose, focusing on?
That's a great question. So when you think about branding, think about getting to know business and the product as if it were a human being. And so that it has all these characteristics. It has a tone, it has a style, it has all the attributes that a person would have. And that's what makes, at the end of the day, if you build that correctly, that's what makes that connection there, right? And so it always starts with that feedback you're talking about, and that connection to what are people finding from this product and this company that they like? What's the real connection? And then you basically are personifying that. And so to do that, it starts with I'm really big on briefs. I always think especially when you're doing brand work, to really take some time and think through the story. Like, so this is the story of the company and how it came together and why we have this product and how we reach with people. And here are some stories about our customers, or if you're really early stage, or what people are saying about the potential. And then you start thinking about, so what attributes should this company then have, right? If it's personified. And you do that type work before you add any design. And I always tell people, when you're really into building a brand, you really want to study, I think it's a mixture of things. So you don't want to put too much of yourself into it, right? You really want to focus on the brand and the marketing. I really always recommend that people pay attention to trends, because there's psychological reasons why people like things. Yeah. So it's like, Pantone colors. People have no idea why they're drawn to colors, but it's because Pantone tells us what colors to be drawn to. So there's a lot that you can do to think about it from a psychological standpoint as well, because you want to build something that people like and are drawn to. And so why not use these tools that help you do that?
Yeah, and they're actually there. They're there in front of you. So so I suppose utilize them as much as anything else, because if we don't, part of it's such an easy thing to gloss over, and we don't think about that. It's trending. It's there. Well, why is it trending? There's a reason for it's trending. There's a reason why it's so in the public eye at the moment. why is it? Well, can we use that in such a way for our branding to be able to develop that a little bit more? I totally agree.
I know, and there's some tools. I always tell people who are really early stage on our social course, check out tools like canva.com because they're tool nows that are really, really well priced. They're great on a budget where you have, they're templates and things that you can customize, and you can reach that because people have such a high standard and expectation for design right now. So use these tools that can help you get to that bar pretty quickly. And that take, instead of paying a graphic designer to build custom stuff, they're tools that you can set up to make it really fast and easy for you. And I think it's important to do that. You want to meet people's expectations in terms of that. And always, I think, the more that you be patient with yourself, the more that you work with the brand and get to know the brand and give it time to reveal itself, the more custom the design work can be. So you just want to meet an aesthetic in the beginning and have some structure around it, but as time goes on, it will come forth and you can do more custom work. I think, for larger companies out here, I wouldn't give them that advice. I would tell them, having custom assets and doing things at a very high bar and kind of being the leader in design is important. But if you're a small to medium sized business, that pressure's off. You can build it out over time.
There's a lot, there is a lot to be said. There is a huge amount of tools out there, and especially when it comes to your branding and stuff like that, is to keep it easy. Don't overcomplicate it, because that's what so many people do. Like, I've seen it with the way they will write their social content, and then the way they will create their graphics, and then they have one font for one part, and you go to the next and it's a totally different font, and it's a different, and you're going, oh, just keep it uniform, stick to a style. Get your style, get a brand kit out and make a brand kit. If you don't know how to make this brand kit, go online, look it up. There is examples out there, and then work to that. And I think that's a key importance. And like, as you say, the types of Canva, Spark, and all these these fantastic programs that are out there. There's so much. There's so many tools out there that we can use, that we can utilize especially with small and medium sized businesses, that most of them they're free to start off with, and then if you get comfortable with it, then you can start branching out and saying, okay, maybe I will spend a little bit of money on this, and then we build up to, I think, where we should be with regards to full on graphic design work and stuff like that. But startups, they don't have that big budget to start off with, so there is a huge amount of opportunities for people to use different types of tools that are available online at the moment.
Absolutely. And I think to avoid kind of the feeling of pressure and chaos that we discussed before, what I recommend people do is, like, instead of it's to sit down and do a strategy and say, okay, the goal is, an example would be, okay, we're going to continue doing, Instagram has changed. It's making influencer marketing harder, but we want to have and maintain a presence there. But it's really difficult for our team to make these beautiful stories that then disappear and these posts that are beautiful. So how are we going to go about doing that? Yeah. And I think put down your goals and then find a reasonable tool, because like Alan was saying, if you have that brand kit, it makes it easier. Your standards are set, your expectations are set, and then you just use an affordable tool that will help you execute with that. And it makes it very doable. But doing that strategy work up front is so helpful, because it focuses you in and takes that overwhelmed feeling out.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with that. And I suppose when we're talking here obviously today about the pressures of marketing, I suppose one of my questions would be is how do we prioritize all of this, and what should we be looking at first? What are the things that we should be prioritizing in regards to marketing?
I think it comes down to first thinking about what are the main goals of the business, and how can marketing support that? Is it brand awareness? Is it revenue? Is it lead generation? Is it upselling? What is that goal? And that really should be the priority of the marketing strategy in the moment. So I'm a firm believer of, you start with what is the problem, and then here's the strategy, and let's prioritize that. So let's fix that. And then when you're doing that plan, think about, okay, so what in terms of daily marketing executional work are you going to keep? So are you going to keep that monthly newsletter? Are you going to keep the social media posts? And do you have the right tools to do that? And so therefore you're able to say, okay, these executional items I have under control and I have the strategy and I've thought through it. And so we're in good maintenance mode for that, with doing the best that we can, providing the best experience we can. Let's really focus on what these major marketing challenges are that support the business's goals. And then you reevaluate. So let's say that your main goal is brand awareness and lead generation. So what you want to do is further define that. So what do we mean in terms of brand awareness? You want to be known by certain industry people, or you want to get a launch out there? Like, what is the goal? And same thing on lead generation. Let's say I want 50 new leads for the sale for sales or something like that. And once you've met that goal, then you can reassess. Okay, so what are go back to what is a priority right now?
Yeah, I think that's such sound advice, because it really is. As you say, the main goal, then break it down, and then you start to see how you can, prioritize the actions, I suppose, that go along with that. And I think, it's a really good, valuable insight to be able to share here today on the podcast. It's there's so much. We could sit here and talk for hours about this, because there's so much content and there's so much to talk about and understand, because I'm sure we'll definitely have to do another one of these podcasts with you, because I'm sure we can find so much more information out as well. It really is. I just find it's fascinating that when we actually stop and we sit back and we look at the pressures of marketing, which is something that I would have never have thought about. I wouldn't have actually sat and said, okay, well, what's the pressure with marketing? We just get on with it. We just do it at the moment. But then it's when you break it down, like what you've said here, it really does. It makes a lot of sense to start prioritizing and starting to understand how your marketing strategy or campaigns are going to work.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak about it. I'm just like every other marketer, and I struggle with this myself day in and day out, which is why it's one of my favorite topics right now. But I think this is a system I've come up with to help myself, but I also have to continuously remind myself and have conversations with marketers, because it's just the environment right now.
Definitely. I always, at the end of every podcast, I always ask my guest one question, and it's not related to the podcast. It's just a sort of a personal question on your take on it. If you had the chance to invite someone to dinner, whether it be past or present, who would it be and why?
It's a great question. And I tend to like to bring, diversity into the crowd to understand. So knowing me, what I would do is I'm really interested, for example, in how Apple has built out the recycling programs. I find that an interesting product supply chain and, in a way, marketing challenge. So I would find someone on that team to bring in for sure. I always love reading Seth Godin and hearing what he has to say. So I would definitely invite Seth Godin. And then I would probably bring in someone from the Tesla team just to hear about how they continuously work on user experience from a marketing perspective. They obviously came in from such a saying, okay, we're going to be innovative in this way, or we're going to do sales and marketing differently. And so that helps structure the team in the right direction. But how do they stick to that in all the new ways of thinking and all the marketing pressures? And does it simplify things because they started from that place?
Brilliant. I think I would definitely like to be at that table, because I think there'd be some very interesting conversations around that dinner table with regards to the people that you're talking about. And like Seth Godin is a absolute, he's a legend in my eyes. I think he's just such an innovator, and it's incredible. Like when you hear the content that he pushes out there, it's just, yeah, it's mind blowing. Kate, how can people get in contact with you if they want to reach out and connect with you?
Please feel free to visit my personal website, which is katewalling.com, and you can read more about me there and how I advise companies. Also, tractionhero.com is my current startup that I'm working a new marketing agency model through that startup.
Brilliant stuff. And of course, you're going to find you, of course, all across all the social networks as well. I think if you just, all you have to do is literally go in and Google Kate, and you will find out loads of information about her. Kate, it has been an absolute pleasure sitting and chatting with you today here on the podcast. It's been very insightful, and hopefully our listeners have learned so much from it. I know I have, and I'm sure we will get a lot of interesting comments coming back. And once again, we want to thank you so much for sharing all your insights with us. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for joining us today on the Social Media Talks podcast, and hopefully you learned some great information and also insights from our guests today. And if you'd like to listen to any of our previous podcasts, you can log on to our website at compassmedia.ie/podcasts. And all of our podcasts are available on all the usual podcast providers, including Stitcher Radio, Google Play, Mixcloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And we would be delighted if you would leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, as we are always thrilled to receive your feedback on any of the programs. You can also subscribe to the podcast there so you never miss an episode as well. And if you'd like the show notes for this episode or for any of the previous episodes, please log on to our website at compassmedia.ie/show notes. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, please do get in contact with us. All you have to do is email us at smtalks@compassmedia.ie. And if you'd like to find out more about the services that Compass Media provide, from social media marketing and training to podcast services, please visit our website for more details. You can also reach out and connect with me across all of the social networks, including Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and I will personally answer every one of your requests. That's about all for today. I've been Alan Hennessy from Compass Media for the Social Media Talks podcast, and we look forward to talking to you next week. And as I always say, be social. So until next week at the same time, bye-bye.
Social Media Talks podcast is a production from compassmedia.ie.